When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
And welcome back to the Social Media Derby. We've got a great episode coming up for you today where we'll go through the Champions League and Premier League football for Man United and Arsenal from the last, let's say, 10 days or so. And before that, I just want to say big thank you to everybody for watching on YouTube. Please subscribe if you can, like the video, share if you can as well. Comment down below with any questions or comments that you might have about the things that we discuss. And for those of you that are listening on Spotify, Apple, or any other podcasting platform, please give us a follow and a 5-star review if you can. It definitely helps a lot with getting more engagement and more listeners on the channel. But let's get straight into it. How you doing, Ant?
Yeah, not a fantastic week for me, as you could probably guess from our stinky results. Yeah. But yeah, looking forward to these last few weeks before Christmas and getting some well-needed rest. How about you?
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad. I actually don't want Christmas to come with the way that Arsenal are playing right now. I just want to keep on going as long as we can and keep this Man City form up as well, and then we'll be in a beautiful position to hopefully not bottle it. But let's get on to the Champions League fixtures first. Obviously, you guys had to play the dreaded Galatasaray away, which is obviously a well-known fixture in a bad way in terms of having to go there as an English team. And then we had Lens at home, which was also a pretty scary fixture given the fact that Lens beat us when we went to their ground. So we'll start off with Man United and Galatasaray. So that was a bit of a humdinger of a game, ended up 3-3. What did you make of the game in general?
Yeah, so I thought it was a really interesting game. Complete basketball vibes, back and forth. We started really well, very clinical. We weren't creating loads of chances, but we took them. Garnacho with a great finish on his left foot, Bruno with the thunderbolt. But unfortunately, I've seen this episode of this series too many times in the Champions League already. 4-3 at Bayern, losing 3-2 at Galatasaray. At home to Galatasaray, losing 4-3 away to Copenhagen. In all of those games, maybe not the Bayern game, because I think they were always ahead of us, but in at least the other two games, we were winning in both of them multiple times with a healthy lead and managed to throw it away. So what I saw afterwards in the latter part of the first half and the second half was pretty much what I feared was going to happen. There's always that hope that you kind of turn the corner, but I just don't think we're ever going to get round that corner this season, the way things are going. I feel like we're just going to be on the edge of that corner, looking like we're free, and then it's just one of those corners that just keeps turning, and we just can't seem to get to the end of the tunnel to be able to see the light. So, I mean, it's quite obvious. Onana basically chucked in one of them, decided not to dive for the other, and got beaten on the near post by. To be fair, their equalising goal was a stunner, so I'm not going to hammer him too much. His positioning was a bit poor, but there's only a select group of goalies in the world that probably would have saved that, even with that. So I think it's a bit harsh to blame him on the third one, but the first one, he completely cocked it up, got defeated by a goal that ended up going very central, so he should have done better with that. And then, the second goal is just ridiculous. Again, biscuit wrists, don't know what he's doing. It's like he's been watching some like De Gea blooper compilations on Twitter, because De Gea started chucking things in like that last season at the end of the season as well. So, yeah, not great. Our Champions League hopes are in tatters, although they were outside hopes anyway, to be honest. But now they look even more unlikely because bloody Bayern decided they weren't going to give it a proper crack against Copenhagen. So now we're praying for miracles. But to be honest, who is it that we got on here? I think we got someone on, and they were like, you don't wish your team to go out of competitions, and you want them to play as many games as possible. But at this point, I've seen enough. Just get me out of Europe. Let me concentrate on the pain that is the Premier League, and give me a nice jammy FA Cup run. Let me play Wigan, Maidstone United, #United until we get to the final, please. Because I can't take us playing good teams. Like, we just can't handle it. So, yeah, really annoyingly, last thing on the Galatasaray game, in the last 15 minutes, they didn't really have loads of chances. Like, they had shots on target, which skews the stats, but they were straight down Onana's throat, and pretty much all of them were routine. I think Zaha had one shot, which he could have done better on, that he just gave straight to Onana. But we had so many chances. And the poor final ball, people shooting when a pass was on, just poor finishing. Like, Palestri didn't look like he knew how to kick a ball. Martial was open about 2 or 3 times, and people decided not to pass to him to have a good shot on goal. And yeah, we, even despite that performance, we probably should have won 4-3 with how many breakaways we had in that last 15 minutes. But yeah, Champions League, I saw some Arsenal social media content creators crying when they heard the Champions League song because they hadn't heard it for so long. I'm crying, but for a different reason. So,
I don't want to hear it anymore.
I don't want to hear it. Give me, oh. That's what I need to hear. Even that brings up pain. So just get me out. Get me out completely, mate.
Don't play any music for me.
No music. I want to hear silence. I want to hear silence on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. All
Exactly.
right?
Moments of silence all midweek, just for the terrible performances. But I will say this, just to wrap that up. We were both relatively close in our predictions. Actually, you went 3-2 United. I went 3-2 Galatasaray, and it ended up just being a 3-3. So I think that was pretty cool, to be honest with you. But let's move on to the Arsenal Lens game. Obviously 6-0 win, 5 of those goals coming before half time, and then one cheeky one in the second half. What did you make of that one before we move on?
I mean, that was a great performance, and we've talked about it on previous pods. Arsenal looked like the old Arsenal in the Champions League. You look a lot more potent going forward. Havertz was looking good. 6 different scorers. Tomiyasu chucking in assists. I mean, Lons were absolutely abysmal, but you guys, kind of made them look quite poor as well. I don't think it was totally on them. I think they didn't.
They came and they tried to play. This is what we're talking about. They came and they tried to play, and then this is exactly what we wait for. Is that we wait for someone a little bit naive to come and actually try to play football properly with us, and then for the most part we battered them. So it was nice for me, at least, because not a lot of teams that we've played so far have been trying to come and like properly have like an open match against us. I can only think of maybe Tottenham trying to like actually play against us, and obviously they had quite a lot of firepower, so it was a pretty entertaining game. But outside of that, everyone else is kind of just like playing a very specific style of football to kind of break us down. And Lens didn't. They came and tried to play properly like they were playing against us at home, and we just took them apart. It was
naive. It was so naive.
Yeah.
Like you said, like you definitely made them look worse. But yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. Like, Arsenal were one of the top teams in the Premier League, one of the top teams in Europe. I know they've been out of the Champions League for a decent while, but just watching back some tapes of how you guys played last season, and even how you guys have played this season, and what to mimic when playing you, it was so obvious. Just go 2 bags of 4, deep line, and just struggle, like fight and suffer for the performance. And they could have had, a sniff at getting something out of the game. But yeah, opening up, going for it, trying to play decent football. Yeah, it was to be honest, you guys look like you were Champions League veterans, and they look like absolute, I don't know, like bloody
Europa League dons.
Yeah, exactly. A team from like, I don't know, Gibraltar or something playing football for the first time. It was just tactically was just ridiculous. So, you guys have wrapped it up now, haven't you? You've wrapped
We
up top
are
spot. You've wrapped up top spot as well.
one, yeah.
So, because Sevilla somehow managed to throw away a 2-goal lead in the last like 15 minutes. So, yeah, my God. I think they just want to go to the Europa, don't they? Like at this point,
There were some
it's like
unbelievable goals in that game, though.
I know the first one.
That was
first
unbelievable.
One was
no look, top binned it.
Yeah. But still, absolutely shocking. Big up PSV though; they did well to do that. That takes minerals. That's something that United have suffered with going down 2-0 at Sevilla. So they managed to do it in the last like 15, 20 minutes. So big up them. But yeah, just tale of two. Just two complete opposite teams when it comes to our Champions League groups. We're bottom, you're top, and you're through already, and we're going to go right down to the last
Scariest
minute,
thing about it is that you've scored the most goals in your group.
Yeah, but we've also conceded the most.
Yeah, no, of course, you've got a negative goal difference, but you've scored the most goals in that group by far.
We've conceded 15. So, yeah, I remember I watched some clip somewhere on one of the social channels where someone was going through it, and it's just like, the stats are a really bad reading, the amount of goals that we conceded. And then when you factor in how many Onana's chucked in, and people were just starting to, quieten down the Onana slander over the last few weeks, because I don't think he's done anything amazing, but he just hadn't thrown it in for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Or missed something that he should have saved. But yeah, he was back with a vengeance, and he said, hold my beer, I'm gonna stink it up for one more night in the Champions League. And that's what makes me even think, unless Bayern put out their under 14s team in the last game, he's going to have shots on target that he's probably going to just let through his biscuit fingers again. So, technically we've got a chance, but let's be real, we haven't got a chance. And if we did, it would be one of the smelliest qualifications to a Champions League group ever, to qualify with 7 points, losing more games than you've won. Ugh. Yeah, I don't want to be associated with that kind of team. I've got to be honest. I'd rather us just go out and just write it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it would probably help you not to have to play as many midweek games, right? So,
yeah.
But anyway, let's move on now to some of the Premier League football. So I think we'll start there with old Man United. I think that was probably the more eventful, I guess you could say, of the two games. So went up to St. James's Park, lost 1-0. I'm going to say that was probably a flattering scoreline for you guys, but let's get into it. For you, what did you make of the entire game? How did you think it went?
Yeah, so I had the joy of not watching this live and watching it back afterwards, or catching the last 15, 20 minutes. I think I got home to watch. And we were actually decent in the last 10, 15 minutes. We had a bit more of the ball. We didn't really have any major chances, but we actually looked like, a semi-coherent team. But from what I heard from yourself and other people, and looking at the live score stats and everything when I was out, this was more like a 3-0, 4-0 type result, really. We got absolutely peppered for the first 75 minutes. Our best performers from when I've watched it back were basically our defence, for somehow managing to keep it at 1-0. And, I'm not saying that they were outstanding, but people like Maguire, Onana, Shaw just looked pretty sturdy. And, but, if it was 3 or 4-0, I doubt I'd put them in there, because a lot of Newcastle's finishing was quite poor, and we were quite lucky because of that. I think it was not so much our defence minimising the scoreline, it was them missing chances, Trippier hitting a bar, people missing, things that they probably could have done better with. 1-0 loss, Anthony Gordon with the goal. He's basically become prime Vinicius, doesn't he, since I said he's shit. So that's fantastic. I'm just taking L's all over the shop.
Yeah, you hate to see it as well, don't you? You hate to see that.
And then, to make it even worse, TNT decided they're going to redo the Newcastle love-in and put all of the same stupid, useless twats on the commentary to just Newcastle off for the whole of the game. So and I love Ali McCoist. Yeah, I love him. He's class. I remember him from A Question of Sport days and all that kind of stuff. He's a big G and a legendary football player, if you know Scottish football, Rangers and all that. But the loving, he was actually sickening listening to him. And like, don't even get me started on Jermaine Genius, like absolute useless pundit. Like, I don't know how he's on TV. He's absolutely poor. He's got a very clear agenda against United as well. Him and the Gabriel Bonhor are just there to rile us up. I can see that's their sole purpose in punditry side. So that was sickening as well, because I don't even think Newcastle played that well. I think they beat us, but they didn't play that well. We were just poor.
They were trying to pass the ball into back of the net. This was really frustrating for me. They would go down the wings, and then I was wondering, like, at one point, why are you not just testing the keeper? And they kept on trying to cut it back, and then Shaw and Maguire were just always in the right spot to just boot it back out. It was shocking from Newcastle as well, to be honest with you. There was no clinical part of them at all.
I don't know who they think they are, to be honest, to start passing it into the net. Like, I know their team outworked us for sure, made us look absolutely rubbish. But let's be honest, they've got bloody Joe Linton, Almiron. I'm not even going to talk about the defence because you've got bloody Jamal Lascelles.
Mate, Shaw was having an
Shaw was good
field day as well. He was marauding forwards, having shots.
He's got that in him though. He's got that in him. If you remember the Newcastle PSG game at home, didn't he slap one in the top bins or something? Like, he's got it in him. He's actually a really decent player, you know. I remember hearing about, because he played at, I think, Mönchengladbach, and he was in a couple of decent German teams that were challenging for Europe before he came to Newcastle, and he was always a player that was like on kind of biggish teams' radars, and then somehow he managed to go to Newcastle, and then he was obviously part of the Steve Bruce and all of that stuff, which wasn't fantastic. But he's actually decent. I think him and Botman are a good pair. But yeah, like, we made Lascelles look like flipping prime Van Dijk. We just made them all look like much better players. And I'll be honest, their team is not great. They're better than us, obviously, at the moment. But I would still take our team on paper. They should be better. And we should be beating Newcastle. Obviously, away, it's quite hard. They've got a leveller because they've got the crowd. And
they put away fans like at the very top.
Exactly. They're very tactical.
Yeah,
they stick the away fans in it. Yeah, they stick the away fans in the gods and the nosebleeds, and they don't allow any kind of atmosphere. Which, to be honest, is really smart. We should do that as well for our stadiums. But yeah, we just made them look like prime Barcelona. The commentary team were talking about them like they were prime Barcelona. It was just an all-round absolute waste of Saturday evening. So I'm glad I didn't watch it live and I did fun activities with family and stuff, because it was just absolutely horrendous. And we should get into the key questions, because I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one is obviously as much as they were like good and pushing you. I think from the midfield and I think midfield upwards on the defensive end, there was not a lot really happening, right? Like, it kept on coming down to Maguire, Shaw, Reguilon, your back four to just have to pull you out of trouble. And one of the big reasons for that was obviously Rashford, Martial. There was times in the game where they weren't trying at all really to get back. We'll start with Rashford. He struggled all round, right? He was not having his best game in general on the ball, but also on the defensive end, he did absolutely nothing. And when he came off, he didn't look best pleased either. So I guess my question to you is, what is going on with this guy? Like, he is arguably the most up and down footballer I've ever seen, while also being someone that has like an unbelievable potential. What is going on with him, and why do you think it is such a big issue for him to contribute on the defensive end and to just try hard?
So it's quite a hard one to analyse, because I feel like you get into the territory of being quite unfair and doing like kind of the whole LeBron James shut up and dribble and go down that kind of route. But to be honest, I just think he's Billy Big Bucks right now, and we've created that around him as well. So I think he thinks he's bigger than the team. That certainly his body language gives off that impression. And our actions have probably validated that. By giving him a huge contract, he put us in a sticky situation where his form dictated that we probably had to give it to him, which is not great because 1 year of form, and I would say, like, a lot of rival fans have said he had a purple patch after the World Cup, but it wasn't really. It kind of started a bit before the World Cup, and it carried over until after the World Cup, until kind of the Carabao Cup final, I would say. From then onwards, he kind of took a slide form-wise, and you could see our team didn't look as good after that, right? So we were so heavily reliant on him that it was basically Rashford and Chill. Got the big contract, but even last season, at times, in the second part of that, the latter part of the season after the Carabao Cup final, he was exhibiting this kind of behaviour. He wasn't tracking back. He would take people on. It wouldn't come off sometimes, and then he would just stop dead in his tracks, and he wouldn't go and help his defender out. And I think the only times I remember him doing it were in a couple of big games, when I guess he could feel the rivalry against Liverpool or against City or something like that. He actually did it a bit more. But in the other games, he didn't do it. And this season, I don't think he's done it in any of them. So when we played City, I don't think he did it. I don't think he really did it. He did it kind of a bit against Arsenal. And then that crossovers with him scoring a goal. And I think that was one of his better performances. But yeah, there's all this jokes around, he's back with his, his childhood sweetheart. So maybe now he's going to be like, chilled out again. But I think there's attitude issues. I think people don't want to say it, and I've been guilty of this, focusing on Maguire and McTominay, the kind of easy targets for criticism around kind of attitude and lack of fight. But I think Rashford is in that category. I think Rashford, Maguire, and McTominay are in a very similar category when it comes to, I think they've got a lot of power in the club, some of which because they're local, or for example, Maguire got a huge fee, and I believe he's a Man United fan. So they have a lot of sway in that club. And when they're not on it, or they don't feel like playing, or they're having issues with the manager, this sort of thing happens, right? And so I think it was very telling. You need to go back and look at who Ralph Rangnick was playing when he was the manager, because he had nothing to lose, right? He's got no agendas. He had no reason to, back certain players over certain other ones. Unlike Ollie, unlike Ten Hag now. He had no skin in the game because he basically knew he wasn't going to be the manager, and he had nothing to lose. Rashford barely saw any minutes. I think that's a key thing to remember. It wasn't like a clash of personalities. I don't really believe Ralph Rangnick was like coming in there telling him, doing a Louis van Gaal, or even what Ten Hag's doing now and having spats with them. I think he purely looked at, why are you not trying? Why are you not working? Why are you not trying to fit in the team? Oh, you don't want to do that? You won't play. You'll come off the bench. I'll play Anthony Elanga. I'll play Garnacho. I'll play other people. And you will just have to watch and see and hopefully learn. But he hasn't. And so I think Ten Hag's kind of pandered to him when he first came in the job. I'm pretty sure, when you play Football Manager, there's one of those bits where when you interviewed for the job, they ask you questions about like what you're going to do when you get the job. I bet you one of the questions for Ten Hag was, we love Rashford. He's our talisman. We need someone to get the best out of him. Can you do that? And Ten Hag has obviously gone, yes, blah, blah, blah. And he's pandered to it. And it's obviously one of the key aspects of his role. How do you get the best out of the local lads? And Rashford is obviously the poster boy for that. So at this point, I obviously respect all the stuff he's done for the kids and all the charitable work he's done. He's obviously he is bigger than football from that perspective. I don't think we should ever try and deny football players that opportunity. But on the pitch purely, he's really not been up to scratch now for the whole season, and you could probably go back into the back end of last season. And his attitude just stinks. So whether it's a psychologist or someone like this at the club that needs to be speaking to him to try and understand why this is, to try and help him regain his form, I don't know, but something needs to happen. And if he's not able to do that, I think Ten Hag's given him enough opportunities to try and play himself into form, and he hasn't. He's getting sympathy penalties like Havertz. So that's not, it's not looking good, bruv. So I would
Yeah.
personally, I would let him ride bench, put Garnacho. I mean, and you're going to hate this, but I would say Antony even looked decent against Galatasaray, right? That was probably his best game he's had for us. And when he came on, he looked like he gave more of a shit than both Martial and Rashford combined against Newcastle. Not saying he was great, but I would
At
play
least he tries on both ends of the ball, right? Like
I'd
he
play
tries to
Garnacho
get
and
back.
Antony.
Yeah, no, yeah, I get you. It makes sense to me. I think from the perspective of at this point, you just need people who try hard, right? And I kind of said this before. This is why I would play youngsters because, yeah, they might not know how to shoot every now and then. Yeah, they might, just not be good enough to be playing in the game. But at least they try hard, and that's got to be the absolute number one thing that Ten Hag needs to be looking for out of this team, because there's no way to play yourself into form if you're not trying. And unfortunately, Rashford in that game, and I hate to say it, he didn't look like he was trying all that hard, or at least he didn't look resilient, right? Like he would get the ball, try something, looked exciting somewhat, and then as soon as he lost it, he's just like, all right, I'm done now. It's that kind of like giving up too early kind of thing that maybe is the real issue there. Whereas Antony, for all his faults, doesn't give up that much, right? Like he will go and start kicking people.
Yeah,
And
I
start
mean
slapping people's hands out of their face and stuff like that, right? Like he'll
that,
start doing that stuff, which at least shows that he cares.
yeah. The petulance is not ideal, and I think that's the problem, right? We either have people who have got yellow bellies and are just not up for the fight, or they're just very, very weak and can't deal with professional sport where you're going to have ups and downs, or you have people that when they do go through the troubled times are almost too aggressive or petulant. And Bruno, Antony, I think Licha, we love them because I think we'd prefer to see people cross over that side rather than have no fight. If we're going to choose between the two, I think we'd all choose, maybe going a bit overboard, because at least you can try and harness that down and try and get them to understand where the line is, and hopefully they can kind of work on that. But I don't know if you can teach someone to become more resilient. Like I think they've got to have something in them. And as much as I love Rashford as a player and as a talent, he doesn't have that in him. And that's why I mentioned the things about McTominay and Maguire, because McTominay goes missing a lot in games, which I think is another sign of that quality. Maguire tends to kind of make errors all over the shop when he's in that kind of scenario. Rashford just gives up. So, in the perfect world, I would just get rid of all of them. If I think they've had enough opportunities, in my heart of heart, I know that they're not gonna reach the levels that we can that we can with them in the team. You literally need to have, that's 3 players, right? You need to have 8 other players that are world class when it comes to mentality to be able to carry those 3 through to have a winning team, I would say. And even then, going up against a Man City who don't have many players like that, probably, I doubt they have even one, right? Arsenal now, who seem to be building that kind of squad, not many. Liverpool, not many. You can question their talent and stuff and say some United players might be equal to them in talent, but when it comes to mentality, to cojones, as Troy Deeney said, we don't have them, and you guys have them. So ultimately, football is a combination of the both, right? It's not just one or the other. You need to have both, and we don't have that. So, yeah, I think I love Rashford as a player, but he needs to have a long, hard look at himself, and the club needs to look at the situation, and we have to decide that, we can't have any player, regardless of whether they're the class of 92 or, another youth player, having this much power and be allowed to get away with that. We all need to buy into it. All of us.
You might have to do the Aubameyang, where you just say,
maybe.
You're my captain and you're probably my best player, but you're going to have to go, son, because no team is, or no player is bigger than the team, and no team is, no player is definitely bigger than the club. Right. And so I think let's move on quickly, because, I mean, one of those players who kind of might sit on the fence there is Martial, right? Because Martial, to me, seems like a guy that does at times try quite hard. It's just that he hasn't really been given dealt a great hand, really. Like, he gets injured very frequently. As soon as he looks like he's back in form, he's injured again. And sometimes he just lacks the quality that probably comes from the lack of match fitness and the lack of consistency in his football, right? And in this game, obviously, Ten Hag was shouting at him, trying to get him to track back. And there was a point where you can see him kind of look at Ten Hag and kind of like say, "What are you talking about? I'm trying," kind of thing. What did you make of that kind of whole spat? Do you think Martial has a similar problem, or what do you think's going on there?
I think Anthony Martial is the most understood player in maybe English football. I like, obviously I understand the question marks around his availability. I think that's fair. I think there may have been times in the past where he hasn't looked like he's cared a lot. But I have to be honest, right? I watched that clip back afterwards. He's not the one to have, an argument with or a spat or point fingers at. He's literally covering Rashford's area to help him press, and then goes all the way back to the halfway line, which I'm sorry, you're not expecting your striker to follow all the way back to go into your defensive final third. No, I don't think anyone asked for that. You don't see Haaland there. You don't see Harry Kane when he's playing for Tottenham there. And they drop quite deep at times, right, to search for the ball. None of them do that. So I think he's just a perfect player to be a scapegoat for every scenario. And like I saw something Jamie Carragher was saying about Rashford, funnily enough, and he brought Martial into the equation and said that, it's clear that Martial doesn't care, that's a fact, and all this kind of stuff. I'm sorry, like Jamie Carragher, I've in previous times disagreed with things that you've said that have turned out to be true, but I have to tell you, you are absolutely waffling out of your ass on this point, because there is no way you can prove that Anthony Martial does not care, and that's a fact. That's absolutely not the fact. That just buys into your narrative that the media have created around him since the day he stepped foot in England, which is that he doesn't care and that we overpaid for him and that he's essentially useless, right? Like he's a foreign player who's just useless. And that's completely not true. Because, for example, against Everton, I thought he was really good, right? Like he linked the ball really well and he was one of our better players. And actually, he looked a hell of a lot better than Højlund has looked in the last few weeks. And everyone tries to, kind of protect Højlund because he's young, and I get it. But quality-wise, Martial is a more complete player than Højlund, right? Højlund may have more potential. He may be more physical, for example, but all round, Martial's got more facets to his game and actually suits working with Bruno and Rashford better than Højlund at this moment. Against Newcastle, okay, he wasn't great. To be fair, he was starved of everything though, right? Like I can't remember how many touches he had of the ball, but at least he was, tracking back to a certain extent, certainly a hell of a lot more than Rashford. So I don't know why Ten Hag's had a go at him. I think it may have just been a case of he was the closest person to Ten Hag, so he shouted at him, as an attacking unit, I would hope. But if it was about Martial, then we've got bigger problems with Ten Hag than we thought, right? Around favoritism, around, how he sees the game. Because, I watched that clip and I'm, not even a football tactico. And you can obviously see that Rashford is the one who's not closing down and who's being lazy and giving up, and Martial's the one who's tracking back. So, yeah, man, I'm to be fair, I'm quite biased. I'm probably in the Adam McCullough, Tony Marshall fan club when it comes to, having a lot of time for him. But I think it was really, he's not the player to moan at in that game. I don't think he was fantastic, but Rashford deserves to get hammered way more. McTominay went completely missing, and that Lewis Miley guy made him look like, a novice in midfield, and he's like a 17, 18-year-old lad for Newcastle. So I don't think this should be something to talk about too much.
Yeah, no, I get you completely, and I think I'd love to see Martial, Højlund, and Garnacho / Antony. Like I don't know why you guys don't try sticking Martial out on the right wing, right? Like maybe you can cut in. You could stick Garnacho back out on the left wing, right? And then you've kind of solved a little bit of a problem. I get that Martial is supposed to be a striker, but
I don't think he's got the legs to play on the wing anymore. I think that's the thing. With the injuries, I think that's taken away that explosive one-on-one pace and that he had before. Because if you remember, he had really good close control, but he could breeze by players, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think he's got that anymore because of the injuries he's had. So I think up front is probably his best position. But I do like the idea of maybe playing Garnacho, Antony alongside him, or even Højlund from the right, right? Because Højlund's quite a powerful runner. I believe he could probably play on the wings too, and he did for Atalanta. So I would experiment with that. I don't think you have to play Rashford when he's playing poorly. I really
And
don't think
I especially
so now.
don't think you need to be playing him playing him out of position. And when we say out of position, out of the position that he wants to play, because as soon as
Yeah,
that happens, I think that is a recurring theme, is that as soon as he plays outside of the left wing position, he suddenly just doesn't do anything. Or
exactly. Yeah, you're probably right.
he can't be bothered, doesn't want to do anything. And I don't get why Ten Hag continuously kind of like says that he can play there, and that, like, you know, if anybody's going to change, it's going to be Rashford. It's not going to be Garnacho. I don't get why he keeps doing that. I think maybe he's trying to teach Rashford a lesson or something. But I think at this point, Rashford is just spitting in his face and saying, you know what, I don't care. I'm not going to try hard if you play me out of position. And I think
we're the ones being taught a lesson when he plays out there every single time. He's not improving, right?
no,
Like,
exactly.
it's quite clear.
Yeah.
He's regressing even more. Like you said, you make a great point. Whenever he's played slightly out of position, because it happens again when he plays up front as the focal point, that tends to be when he starts to give up and, you know, look a bit stroppy and not work and try hard. But if he's on left wing in his perfect position where he feels the most comfortable, then suddenly, you know, he's Ballon d'Or level according to some delusional United fans. Like, it's a player can't be that temperamental and like sensitive to a position change. You have to be able to play more of them. But yeah, let's move on to the next topic because it's pissing me off.
Well, I think we'll probably wrap up the United segment there and get onto Arsenal. We obviously went to Wolves. I predicted, what was it, like a 3-0 win. I thought we were going to slap them. Ended up beating them 2-1 with a very sticky last 20 minutes. But I have got to say that should have been like a 4-0 win, right? Like, outside of that goal and the mistake from Zinchenko to give Wolves that goal and make me look like an idiot again, because Cunha scored it.
That was a great goal, by the way.
After me, you know, he was a great finish, left foot, binned it.
He scored two since you said that.
Yeah. I feel like Premier League players, you just have to reach out to me, tell me what you want me to say bad about you, and then somehow you'll start performing. But I think outside of that, like, Arsenal were quite dominant. I think Saka had a great game. Odegaard had a great game. Tomiyasu, again, had another great game. A little bit of an injury scare as well. So I'm praying that he's going to be all right. But I think for the most part, we were dominating that game. And I think that the 2-1 really doesn't show as much as possible of like what we should have really been doing. Like, I think our XG was like at 4 and their XG was at like 0.79 or something like that. And we ended up only winning 2-1, which is not great. And it's just like, it brings on the same old comments that you typically get, which is, we need a 9, we're underperforming XG, blah, 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 blah. But actually, if you think about that game, right, like, Nketiah did miss a couple of sitters. Gabby Jesus probably could have done a better every now and then, but I think for the most part, there was one part that was just not clicking really when it came to the finishing. So again, I'm not all that disappointed with the result. I think we played well, which is something, you know, more than I can say for a lot of our other games so far this season. So it's nice to see us play well, but that last 20-minute thing that we keep doing now, where we let in a goal and then everything gets squeaky for the last 10 minutes. I'm not liking that part. And so far this season, it's happened quite a few times, and it's been most of the times where we've dropped points, where we've either drawn or lost or whatever it was. And Wolves are a dangerous side, right? Like, we talked about this before. They've got a good manager. They know how to play football. They've got good players. That could have got sticky for us. You know, that could have been a 2-2. That could have been, you know, something worse. So from my point of view, I really need to see us be a bit more clinical in front of goal. And on top of that, I need to get rid of these mistakes. And I'm sorry, Zinchenko, you played really well for the game. He was really good up until that point, but you've got to get rid of those mistakes, man. Like, if we're really trying to go for the title again, if we're really trying to go deep into the Champions League, like, we need to be clinical, put games away, and then just coast and kind of take our foot off the pedal a little bit better. 2-0 is not a point where you can do that. So I'm really hoping that, you know, moving forward, we can kind of get rid of this weird streak that we're on right now. What did you make of the match, Ant?
Yeah, it was. I think you were really dominant, and Wolves are a decent team. But I completely agree with you. I think your attack started to look a bit more potent again. Like, it looked like you were creating more chances. you just kind of lack that finishing touch. And like you said, Eddie missed a few good chances. I think Bumhole Eyes had a few one-on-ones with the goalie, Trossard, for those of you who can't visually tell that straight away from looking at him. Tomiyasu was really good. I think he had a great week, by the way, because he was good against Lens as well. And he's just been building up more and more. So I think it's a good, like, from a performance standpoint, I think it was a really good sign, right? Because I think you've been getting the results, but performances are things that the Arsenal fans have been a little bit ropey about. But I think this time it was the opposite. I think you guys were, performance-wise, on point, like really on point. I think you guys played amazing. But you just kind of lacked that finishing touch, which I guess is another issue that you've seen in previous games. But 2-1 makes it seem a lot closer and flattering to Wolves, really, because one Zinchenko mistake, barring that one mistake, it was a comfortable 2-0, and you could have said, like you said, 3-0, 4-0 would have probably been quite fair. But I am very envious when I watch Arsenal play, to be perfectly honest, because at least I can see why I'd want to watch them, right? If I was like a neutral fan or just a fan getting into football, watching Arsenal play is enjoyable. I know it hasn't been as enjoyable this season as last season, but I tell you what, I'd take that from a Man United perspective. I take that unenjoyable football you've been having for the last 3 or 4 months over the bloody crap that I've seen. So, yeah, I think you guys did well, and you're top of the league, mate. 2 points clear of Liverpool, 3 points. Is it 3 points clear of City now? Maybe 4 even, or 5. But yeah, you're looking good, and the performances are starting to come. So it's one of those old cliches, right? To win ugly is a good sign, because eventually you'll start playing better, and I think that is what I can see on the verge of coming. But yeah, let's get into a couple of questions I had for you around the performance. So it was around. Do you agree with me, I guess, around the fact that or the opinion that your attack is looking more potent in the last couple of games, and that's surely a good sign, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we definitely have looked a lot more fluid, which is the point that I was kind of missing. Is like we've been looking kind of stop-starty, and it's because of the way that teams have been playing against us, right? They haven't been allowing us to do the kind of jinky-majinky play that we're looking for. Haven't allowed Odegaard to play his little kind of like cheeky through balls. Haven't allowed, Saka to get runs at defenders, cut in and do the kind of things that he was doing so well last season. So these last 2 games, maybe the Lens team kind of, and their tactics against us made us look really, really good. But it was nice to just see us get back to being very fluid and having space and being able to create chances and put them away, like that game kind of showed. But the game against Wolves, I'll be honest with you, I thought that Wolves would give us more problems because of the management. I think the management of the team, I know that Gary O'Neill is smart. I know that he knows tactically, he's very analytical of other teams. And I think I was expecting him to come out there and play that football that has been so frustrating for us for the last, let's say 14 weeks. And they kind of just allowed us to play a little bit more. And I liked to see Odegaard sitting a little bit deeper and, not so close to Saka. It kind of gave Saka a bit more time and a bit more space to kind of move into the places that he wanted to get to. So I thought from that perspective, I think that was one of the tactical changes that were made that were really good. Obviously, Tomiyasu's been great, and I think we just need to keep playing him as long as we can. I'm hearing that he's going to get another contract as well, which I'm really happy to hear about as well, because he has been class, right? And I think he's shown on the attacking side of the football that he can do what he needs to do. So I think, generally speaking, there have been some key reasons why we've been able to play such kind of like attacking and more attractive football. And I'm just hoping that we will be allowed to continue to do that. Or I'm at least hoping that Arteta's figured out a way to break down some of these teams that are setting up a certain way against us. So it bodes well for the future. But until I see us against, a more, let's say, housing team, I'm not certain of whether we'll still continue to be able to kind of like enforce our will on other teams, or if they're going to start doing it back to us. So the next couple of games, I think, will be telling for whether we really turned the corner on our performances.
Yeah, I think that's fair. To be honest, I think your two results in this past week have come against teams that have played a bit more football against you.
Correct.
And so I guess that makes a lot of sense, man. To be honest, it would probably be a bit premature to be like, this is our Arsenal back when you haven't kind of done it against a team that's playing a bit lower, more of a lower block and a little bit more kind of
Yeah.
counter attacking. But yeah, fair enough. What about okay, so there was this and the big up Nabeed Haroon Rambo from No Ratings podcast because he put out a really interesting tweet that kind of reverberated around all of football Twitter around world class players in the top 6 teams or whatever. Decky
Hmm.
Rice was included in his one. I think it was quite a popular opinion that Declan Rice is now in the world class category alongside Rodri. Do you agree? And what have you made of his start to life at Arsenal? Because I've also seen people say, "Oh, we robbed West Ham. We should give him another 20 million." But then
Yeah.
there are other people that say, "Oh, you guys are breading him because he's a DM and he just does DM stuff, and then everyone acts like he's had the biggest blinder of his life." Where do you sit on that around Decky Rice?
I mean, do I? I'll get onto his performances first. Like, he has been the most stable and solid player in that team so far, right? And we're talking about a team that usually has pretty stable players in terms of like Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, Saliba. We have a lot of stable players that really put in good performances on the regular. They're not always giving us 10 out of 10s, but they're giving us good 8 out of 10s. And Declan Rice has just embodied that for us. Like, he's come in, taken almost no time to get settled on like what he needs to do. He's immediately kind of started to gel in the team, and he just does. And this is the thing about what you're just saying. He does all of the simple things really, really, really well, right? Like, and as much as people want to say, "Oh, he's just a DM doing DM things," he's also doing a lot of progressive passing. He does a lot of like things that wouldn't necessarily go into a DM category, right? Like, he's not just like Fernandinho, just kind of like tackling people, getting the ball and just passing it to like David Silva to do madness, right? Like, he's actually being quite progressive himself. He's showing that he's good on the ball. He's showing that he's, you know, as resilient as you can get in terms of a player. So I think he's been absolutely class for us, and I don't want people to understate the role that he plays in that team, because that stability, I think you see at Man United now, when that stability isn't there, your whole team can crumble quite quickly, even with good quality around them. So from my point of view, he is outstanding, and it's exactly the kind of player that I wanted in this team. I don't need someone big and flashy. I don't need someone, you know, to be honest with you, like Kai Havertz, I didn't need someone like that. I needed someone more like Rice, who was going to come in, stay fit, fingers crossed, touch wood, and just and do the simple things well. And that's exactly what he's done. Now, when it gets into the world class category, I'm gonna throw this back at you, Ant. Is James Maddison world class?
No,
Then,
absolutely not.
unfortunately, Declan Rice is not yet world class to me, because I think they're quite similar in the fact that they've been really, really good for lower level teams for a while now.
Mm.
Just because you come,
That's
just
a
because
really
you
good
come,
measuring stick.
yeah, I mean, just because you come to a good team and you have 15 weeks or 14 weeks of being good, I don't think we should act so quickly to say that you're world class. Do I think Declan Rice will become world class? Yes. Unfortunately, the world class category to me, you need a season plus at the top level of football to be doing that, right? And
Yeah,
ideally, it'd be a little bit
I
longer than
agree.
that, even, right?
I agree. I
And this
agree.
is where I say, like, Saka, in my mind, is world class because of the performances from last season and because of the performances this season, right? In the Champions League included.
Mm.
He's showing that he's, to me, maybe it's a little bit like on the iffy side for some people, and I get that, but he's more dead certy for me as being a world class player than Declan Rice so far. And that's not to say that Declan Rice isn't playing at a world class level right now, but to give him that world class tag, it depends on how we're defining what that world class means. Because to me, world class is like, you've shown it for a good amount of time that you are one of the best players in that position. And
Yeah,
I
100%.
think he's shown it for these last like 4 months or whatever, 4 months. I think he has shown it, but you've got to do it a little longer before we can put him into that world class category, because it's the same stuff that people are saying about Madison. Like, oh, now he's suddenly better than KDB. No,
Give your head a
calm
wobble.
down. Exactly. Give your head
Give
a
your head
wobble. And
a...
sleep it off, mate, because
Exactly.
we can't. We're not doing that recency bias, prisoner in the moment stuff. And I'm gonna
Yeah, but
unfortunately
people
have to
do.
do it against Decky.
No, but people do, and I hear you. I think Saka's the player in your team that has the strongest shout for being world class, right? And I'm not saying that he's the only player that has played to that level, because I think Saliba has, I think Declan Rice has, I think Odegaard last season has, I think Gabriel Martinelli potentially has or is very close to, but it all comes down to what you've said. Declan Rice has been very good for West Ham, but they're singing, the Danny Dyer song to Europa Conference League winning, not anything too high level. Martinelli's won nothing really, and he's only done it for you could say maybe a season and a half. Odegaard as well, only a season. Saliba, you could say maybe a season and a bit, but I'd say this season I think he's looked like the real deal Holyfield, right? Like last season, I think there was so much excitement that some of his like lesser performances were completely eradicated, but I do think he had a few. But this season, he looks almost flawless, right? I don't think I've seen him get twisted up once, or even have like a period in a game where he looks shaky. So I think, I think you've had world class performances. You've had players who are in that kind of form, but I think Saka's got the best shout. But even then, I think the last sprinkling you need to be world class is you got to win something, right? Like you have to. And I think as soon as Saka wins something, he's got the stats, he's got the performances, he'll have something to hold on to that I think it will be undeniable. He will be world class, right? And I think Decky Rice is trending. I don't think it's an insult to say no, but say, look, you've got 4 players that are trending towards there, because that's really good, man. Like we talked about it when we did our international 11. We could only name 4 or 5 players on each of those like unbelievably well decorated teams that could potentially be world class. So if you got 4 or 5 trending that way, if you got 2/3 of that, you'd be looking real good for big trophies. So I think it's not a slight, man, and I
No,
think Decky
I
Rice
think
is
we
doing
just
well.
have to remember it's a bit of a slap in the face to people that have been doing it season in, season out for like 6
Yeah,
years. That have been like, for example, like KDB. When he's seeing these Madison shouts, he must be like, "What are you talking about? I just want a
exactly.
treble." Right, like, and I've been doing this now where I've been basically the best player in the league or close to the best player in the league for the last like however many years. So I do think I want to bring some kind of like calm and patience back to
Yeah,
this whole discussion, because even Rodri, like he's been doing it for some time now. He's had probably the shakiest of all his performances this season, actually, funnily enough. But I think it's a little premature to start putting him into that category. It's the same thing that like people are doing it with Bellingham now, and I get it, right? Like people are like Bellingham's the best player in the world. And I'm just like, maybe right now, like he'd be the first name on your team sheet right now,
form wise,
form
yeah.
wise, yes. But like we got to give it a minute now, right? Like it's a slap in the face to people around him, like Tony Cruz and Modric, who have been doing it week in, week out for like
Vinicius even.
10 years, right? Like yeah, like Vinicius too. So I think we just need to all settle down a little bit. And we're doing it especially for a lot of these English players, right? Like I just said, Declan Rice, Jude Bellingham, and Maddison. Like we're getting a little ahead of ourselves again on all these English players, whereas these foreign players, it takes them years before they get recognised for being good
Exactly.
at stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
at this point, it's a good example with Palhinha as well. Like he's doing it at Fulham, he's playing really, really well, but until he goes to another big team, like no one's going to be saying that he's world class or anywhere near it. And obviously, he hasn't been as great this season, but we just need to settle down a little bit on some of the, like, first of all, some of the English bias, but also set like the recency bias. We can't go like nuts on this because you put unnecessary pressure on a player who's playing well, man. Just let him play well. And when the end of the year comes or when next season comes, let's see what we've done and let's see where we've got to. And at that point, we can start having these conversations. But until then, we just need to settle down a little bit and just let players play without putting unnecessary pressure on them.
Yeah, just enjoy them in the moment, right? Like they're playing really well, like you said. Quite a lot of English people being, English players being shouted out on that list of players that we talked about, and in and around that category. Didn't even mention Harold Jebediah Kane as well, who's obviously, he's definitely in there. So, England are looking good, but we need to give it a bit more time. They need to prove themselves on the biggest stages, I think, before we can, stamp them up with that world class tag. I think you're right, man. And you avoided that that banana peel that I put in there for you because you know I know there's a little bit of Arsenal in you that was going to be like, he's world class, mate. But let's go on to the match previews then. Before we wrap up the pod, we got 2 Prem games each this week, which is great. Just what I need, more games for us to be rubbish in. We've got 2 games at home, United at Old Trafford. You've got 2 games away. I'll start off with the midweek fixtures then. Man U versus Chelsea. Oh. Chelsea are just like an absolute enigma because their performance...
One week they can be class and one week they can be absolutely terrible.
Their performances would indicate they're a decent team trending up, and they're growing. But their results and the games that they've lost, they just look like the same old stinky Chelsea from last season. So, you know what? I'm going to hope and pray that we find some of our form from last season at home, and we give them. I want to say slapping, but I really don't think we're capable of slapping anyone at the moment. I think we're going to beat them 2-1. But yeah, I don't trust Chelsea. I don't trust us, right? But I don't trust Chelsea even more. And a thing that people have been kind of talking about is, but Chelsea have been good against the good teams. Number one, I don't know if we're in the good teams category right now. Yeah. Number two, all of those games have been at home.
Yeah.
I don't think you can include that Spurs game as like, they were really good. Spurs chucked it against them, right? And they were 9 men. But at home to you guys, at home to Liverpool, at home to City, they were good. But they come into us. So let's see how they handle it. But I think we'll win 2-1. What do you think, Johns?
I'm going to go 2-2.
Fair enough. I think that's probably 2 struggling teams.
Both teams let in quite a lot of goals, but I can see you scoring a couple of goals as well. I'm going to go 2-2.
Yeah, fair enough. And then on the Tuesday, in fact, you guys play before us because that Man U Chelsea game's on Wednesday. Yeah. You guys are travelling to the Terraced House Stadium in Luton to play your fellow Hertfordshire team. I believe they're in Hertfordshire. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that game? Do you think you're going to win? Surely you've got to come and give us big smoke, Skeppy settings.
No, because I think Luton will set up the way that we were talking about before. They're not as good, so I still think we'll beat them 3-0. But we're not going to come out and slap them like 7-0 or 8-0 or whatever we need to do, because I think they're learning a little bit quicker than that. They can't be doing that, and I think against us at home as well, I don't think they're going to be naive enough to come out and try and play football against us. So I think we're going to go 3-0, but it's going to be a struggle to get those 3 goals. It's going to be like a couple penalties and jammy stuff. And so that to me, that's not smoky settings, because Arsenal are top of the league and Luton are pretty much bottom of the league or close to it. So we should be slapping them at least.
No, they're actually 3-0. They're actually not in the bottom. They're not in the bottom 3. They're in.
Oh yeah, because they got a win recently, didn't they?
Yeah, they're in 17th place. They got a win, and then obviously Everton got deducted 10 points. But I think Everton are only a couple of points behind them now. So expecting...
It won't be long before Everton. They get back down to the bottom. Let's be honest, right? They might be trending a little bit up, but they're going to be in that convert.
You know what, yeah? I actually have to give them a smidgen of credit. They're the one team that I think recognise what they're in, the situation they're in, right? Like they know that they're rubbish and they're in the Premier League, so they need to just like batten down the hatches,
survive,
put 10 players behind the ball and just try and get their Terraced House Stadium, riled up and get the community involved, because I think that's their only shot. So I don't think you're going to win 3-0, man. I actually think this will be a lot tighter, but I think you'll get the dub, but I think you're going to win 2-1. And I think there's going to be moments when it's going to be a bit sticky. And I think, I'm not just putting this on you because Liverpool found it difficult there, didn't they? Tottenham won 1-0 as well. It was tight. Yeah. I think we've got the potential to go and lose there as well. So, let's not even talk about Man United, but I think it'll be tight. Yeah. So I'm saying 3-1.
I can see that. I'm still going with 3-0. Just I'm going to keep on saying 3-0 until we do it, because at this point it's frustrating.
Couldn't you judge? All right, let's go on to the weekend's games then. We're both playing on Saturday. Man United playing Bournemouth at home. Your Arsenal are going to Villa Park, which is probably the hardest game. Everyone gives big chat about Newcastle. Game, they give big chat about Newcastle away. They give big chat about Anfield. But you saw what Fulham did, right? 4-3 there. A couple of other teams have got some decent score lines there. So I actually think Villa's probably the hardest place to go to right now. They're on fire. They're unbelievable at home. I think they've got the best home record this calendar year. So let's continue with the Arsenal side then. What do you think of this game? What do you think the score's going to be?
I think we're going to have a wobble. I think it's going to be like a 2-2. Unfortunately, I think Villa is a really difficult place to go. They've got a lot of really good informed players. I think people forget that they've got arguably the second best striker in the league right now. Right, obviously Kane's gone, and Ollie Watkins is nuts, man. I had in my FPL team. It looked like he was going to be injured, and I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to put him in just in case, and if he goes out, I'll swap him with somebody else. And he came and he scores, man. This man is just unbelievable, and I got a lot of respect for him. But I think it's a hard game for us. I think they're not going to let us play the way that we want to play, and then they've also got a lot of attacking threat. Right, they've got like Diaby, they've got Douglas Luiz in form. Somehow John McGinn's playing like bloody prime Zidane out here for them. So I think from that point of view, I'm going to say I think that's going to be a tough game. I could see it being like a 1-1 or a 2-2, but they're going to score against us, man. I'll go for a 2-2. What do you reckon?
Fair enough. I don't think it's going to be a good evening because it's a 5:30 kickoff for you guys. So I think Unai is going to do you.
Who? Oh,
I think it's going to be a good evening for him, and I think Count Dracula of Birmingham City is going to do Arteta.
I hate that because there's been these stupid content coming out about the best Premier League managers right now, and like everyone's just completely being like, oh yeah, Unai's certified number 3. No, there's no competition, which I don't disagree with, but they're just doing prisoner of the moment stuff again, right? Like,
yeah, it's form,
and everyone's like, now he's the best manager they've ever seen. Yeah. I'm just like, come on now.
But I mean, it's kind of form, but also look at his track record. So
he has a history of being good.
Shouts. Yeah, I get the shouts. He's probably got a better legacy than the rest of the managers beyond Klopp.
Yes, he does.
And Pep. Probably even he's got better track record than Poch, better track record than Ten Hag, better track record than Arteta. Any other bigger manager that's in the league, he's definitely equal to, if not better. So I get the shouts, but you're right. Villa have become everyone's hipster team. We said earlier in the season we thought they're going to do well, so we're quite Hackney Wick hipsterish as well. But I think it's going to be a good evening for Unai. I just look at their team, and you're right. Ollie Watkins he's on fire. Diaby scored in midweek in the Conference League. Douglas Luiz has just put up some silent stats where he's moving like one of the best midfielders in the league. So that's kind of like crept out of nowhere.
He looks getting a tune out of Bailey as well.
Leon Bailey, I hate him. He's an absolute chief, but he's scored, or I think he scored in the 2-2 at Bournemouth as well. So. Yeah, they've got, and you know what I really rate as well? They've picked up some gems under the radar.
Pau Torres and that, yeah.
Pau Torres with Diego Carlos is a nice blend of calmness, and Diego Costa's an absolute mad head case. So they've got aggression. Ezri Konsa, I think, has got an England call up the other day. He's doing really well. So Matty Cash is a bit of a house. Ask Bentancur. So. They've got elements. Amy Martinez, even bigger house, So I think
Alex Moreno. They've got a lot of quality in that team, man.
Yeah. They do, and like you said, John McGinn. I don't rate him either, but he's playing really well and he works really, really hard. So I think they're going to just about nick it. I'm going to say 2-1 Villa, but I don't think it will be mad for you guys to get a draw or even win it 3-2. Right? I think it's going to be one of those games like we predicted with Galatasaray, where it could go either way. Anyway, it really depends. But I think Villa are gonna sneak it 2-1. So let's go back to United Bournemouth then to wrap up this prediction. We should absolutely slap them because Bournemouth, they've looked a bit better over the last couple of weeks, but they're in that cluster of shite clubs at the bottom of the league.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say 2-0, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a 1-0 to United and we just about snuck it like the Luton at home game. Yeah. So I'm going to go 2-0. I wouldn't be surprised if Garnacho and Fernandes Bruno scores because they look about the only players that have got any kind of output at the moment for us attacking wise. So I'm going to go 2-0. What do you think?
I'll go 2-0 as well. I think. Oh, actually, no. With that game against Chelsea, I'm going to go 1-0. I'm going to go 1-0 United. I think you'll get the win there, but I think it's a tough ask when you've got 2 games in a week and one of them's against Chelsea. So it's not going to be an easy game. And as much as Bournemouth crap, like Iraola's not like he's not as useless as certain managers.
They've looked better recently as well. They've looked better in the last couple of weeks, man. Semenyo's looked decent. They've got a couple of players that can definitely hurt us. So I don't think it's out of question. Yeah, I don't think it's out of question that they score. So it could be a 2-1. They could even draw. Like, let's be honest, we're so unpredictable. Anything's possible right now. But I think all right. I mean, so then it looks pretty like a decent double-header week for both of our teams. But let's see.
We'll see how it actually goes. Yeah.
Let's see what mood we're in by the next podcast. But it's been a good one, despite all the
madness. Well, anyway, let's wrap it up there. A big thank you for everyone that is listening and watching. As always, like I said earlier, subscribe, like, share, follow us, give us a 5-star review, and we'll see you next week. Cheers, Ant.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.